Hello, everybody. Hello. We got some cool lighting in here right now. Like the sun is setting. So nice. I've got like a fun little beanie on, and I'm bringing some here. You probably don't know what all these say. Some kindness, some peace, some equality, some love, some inclusion, some hope, and some diversity. All right. How about that for a message? Oh my goodness. So I am going to share with you today. I felt like this was really a timely message. I think when things start stirring in the world, or when you're embarking on something new, or when you're surrounded by family sometimes, or you just got people close to you that are comfortable speaking their unsolicited opinions, it can sometimes get heavy. And you can, a lot of times too, when you're putting yourself around family, you can see how healed you are. I don't know if you've heard that saying before, but a lot of times that's true. There's certain things that when we're not around certain environments, they're not brought up. They're not triggered, right? We're most of the time okay. But when we're brought back into familiar spaces or around people that don't always call out our greatness and call out our strengths and see, what we've worked so hard to become, right? And don't really acknowledge or affirm or appreciate us, it can kind of bring out some insecurities. It can really pour some dirt on our self-confidence, and it can just cause us to show up not in our best self. So I'm going to talk today on boosting your self-confidence. Keyword boosting or boost. Okay. And this is something that is a skill. This is something that's an activity. This is something that's a practice. This is something that requires intention. It requires commitment. It requires focus, right? It's not something that you just go to a conference or a seminar, you get amped up and then you're good. Like you're just confident. It's not, and you don't just arrive at confidence. I mean, life is going to have storms. There's going to be things that happen that knock the wind out of us sometimes, like to all of us, that's true, right? And so we can still have practices that help us boost our confidence. And it's really important to have practices, particularly when you know you're going to be in environments that are challenging for you, or you're going to be around people that you personally can't in a healthy way spend large amounts of time with. There's just practices that you can practice to help you stay strong. Okay. So I've got about, I don't know how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We've got 8 practical things that you can do, and you can really pick maybe the top 3 that really you're called to or that resonate with you most. But imagine if you practice these all the time, how you would actually feel. Because sometimes, I know this is true for me, when you don't have a strong sense of identity, or you're not really sure of your purpose, and you don't really know who you're called to or any of that, and you're just, in transition, let's say, or just really redefining a lot of things in your life, it could be really hard to show up and to be confident, right? And we can put on our best smile, but underneath it, we're like freaking out, right? So these things are just ways that you can practice experiencing that, and then bring these practices to those times. Okay. But the best way to do this is practice things like this all of the time so that you're always prepared. All right. So the first one is, I hear this in a lot of self-help teaching, a lot of worldly teaching. And I take a spirit-led approach. I've just found that helps, right? Because one of the sayings that I love is realize I'm not God, right? Like realize I'm not God, that I don't know everything, that I'm not in control, right? There's so much that I don't have control over. There's so much that I don't know. And I'm making myself available to the wisdom of God, right? And I can't define myself personally by what I've done, what I've accomplished, what other people say about me, what a job title is. Like, it just doesn't work for me, right? And if any of those things shift, I lose my identity, right? So for me, I root my identity in God, meaning, who does God say that I am, right? And you could just say, just identify just visualize what God says. The world will say, visualize your highest self, visualize your future self, Okay. And that works to an extent, but where there is a sticky point or a trap with that is we don't always know what's best for us. Okay. Just picture relationships sometimes. There's been times that when we let our heart lead, that when we visualized what we thought we wanted, it did not lead us to a good place and it was not a good fit for us at all. So I want God's wisdom and counsel in this because God knows far beyond what I do, right? So with that, whatever you're led to or called to do now, the practice of visualization is so, so powerful because what we often get caught up in is we get caught up in rehearsing what is. And when you rehearse what is, you just get more of what is. Or we get caught up in things that happened in the past that limited us now, and that paints a fear over where we're going. So we can get caught up in these cycles and these patterns of limited believing. And so unless we are doing intentional counter work to that, that stuff is still going to be a thread in anything that we do moving forward. So it is so, so important to practice becoming stronger in the truth and in the identity and the vision that God has for you, or that is stronger than what it is or what has happened in your past. Okay. So if you are called, what does that look like? To show up to situations, to people, right? To each day as someone who is called. What does it look like to show up as somebody who is chosen, right? What does it look like to show up as somebody who is royalty, right? Like royalty just carries itself completely different. Okay. What does it look like to be adopted, right? To not just be chosen, but it's deeper than that. To just be like, I'm calling you my own, right? What does it look like if you are form-shaped anointing for a purpose, right? Like visualize that in how you show up to something. Because here's what it does. If you are at a current job, let's say, if you visualize it like you're called there, if you were chosen for that, yeah, God used people to do it, but you show up there different if you're not trying to earn approval, if you show up there on assignment. See what I'm saying? So visualize what God says about you. And then you could even inquire to God about this, but I would spend time constantly visualizing what God says about you, or the traits is another way to get to it. So how does somebody who is bold and somebody who is courageous and somebody who is daring and somebody who is admirable and somebody who's honorable and somebody who is just inspirational, how does that person show up? Because that's really revealing to you parts of yourself that you want to activate more of, but that maybe you're not living fully in yet. So you can also visualize your future with that version of you showing up. Does that make sense? And then you can also visualize yourself in glimpses or images of things that maybe God has revealed to you, whether that's different roles or assignments or projects or cities or communities, whatever that is. But doing this work, when you visualize that, there's something that comes over your soul and you're able to show up in your world totally different because you know that there's a plan for you and it's a good plan. You know that you're chosen. You know that you're called. You know that you're on purpose. You know these are the traits that are excellent and that are worth activating and showing up in, and you know that doing your best is enough, right? And so that process of just visualizing can cover so much ground. Next one is affirm truth. And this is something that is so normal. And I know that you see folks that are putting sticky notes everywhere on their mirrors or in their car or something on their wallet or like on the refrigerator. And if you need to do that so it's visual and you see it all the time, that's good. I personally I don't know if you remember like back in the day where you had to learn like all of the states, right? And all of the capitals, you had to put them in index cards and like you had a state and you had the capital, right? Like, so index cards have always been something that have worked for me. So you could always put, on the front side, a trait that you're activating, let's say, or a truth that you're believing, like abundance, right? And then maybe put a verse on the other side that's a promise that you are activating or that you are stepping into or that you are intentionally manifesting in this season. And so that when you're flipping through those and just spending time doing that every day, you'll just put it in your memory, right? And when you store that word in your heart, it will come out, especially when you need it most. So affirming truth is something that we need to do all the time, because our exposure to things is often the news, it's often TV, it's often social media, it's often emails and demands and distractions all the time, right? So unless we're affirming truth, all of that can dictate what happens, right? We can just be the victim of circumstances rather than the influencer of them. Okay. So it's super important to have a different narrative flowing. And we only do that if we're, again, going countercultural. That's a lot of what supernatural living is. It's going counter to the culture and showing up with something different. But that doesn't just happen. You've got to train it and activate it. So that's number 2, is affirm truth. Number 3 is do one thing that challenge you, that intimidates you slightly, that seems kind of scary, like you get those butterflies, that's like awkward, like, but the thing that you are led to do, that you're uncomfortable doing, that's going to stretch you, that's going to challenge you in some way, do at least one thing every day that does that for you. So if that's reaching out to a stranger and starting a conversation, if that's sharing a prophetic word with somebody, if that's making that phone call to that person to mend a relationship or to reconnect in some kind of way, if that is giving a really generous gift to somebody, whatever it is that you're inspired to do, but do the thing that challenges you, that scares you. If you're called to launch something, maybe it's getting the website name, maybe it's registering the business, the DBA or the LLC or whatever you want it to be, right? Maybe it's actually building a website or connecting with a consultant that's going to work with you to do that. Whatever it is, take the next scary step and train yourself to do hard things, to do scary things, to do intimidating things every day. Start a new program, hire a coach, like the thing that just is like, oh my God, I did it, right? Like you're going to feel like so proud of yourself after, like feel super weird before you do it, but you'll just be like, I'm so glad I did it. Do one thing every day, okay? Number 4 is challenge your inner critic. So this is being very aware or thinking about what you're thinking about every day. So the word says to take every thought captive. So we cast down every thought that's exalting itself above the truth. That requires you to be diligent, to think about what you're thinking about. And a lot of times we're not trained to do that. We just let certain things come into our mind. We just allow opinions and judgments and fears and limiting beliefs and all this stuff come into our mind, and we never filter it. Okay, so you've got this garden of your mind. So picture that like any garden out in the world, right? If you do not tend to that, there's going to be weeds, and it doesn't take long, right? Like if you've ever done a weeding project before, you'll go out there and it seems like the very next day there's like fresh ones that are popping up. And you're like, what? Classic example. I am a firm believer in managing things and keeping things tidy and stewarding them well as you go, so that you just don't have like crazy buildup. Because the crazy buildup is just like, you dread it, you procrastinate. It's so frustrating to actually get it done. It just takes more time to get it done. Like laundry buildup, whatever it is for you, right? So I'm one of those people that weeds often, like maybe every 2 weeks or so, right? Like whatever the season is, whatever it takes, right? So that it's easier to manage. So I'm out there for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes versus like hours at a time, right? Particularly if it's like really hot and all that stuff, you just don't want to deal, right? So my neighbor's complete opposite scenario, legit out of his mouth, he says, "What you doing over there, weeding?" And I was like, "Yup." And he thinks it's hilarious because he's like, "Oh, I tried that, but it seems like the more I weed, the more that just seems to come up," right? Well, that's a perspective. That is one point of view. My point of view is totally different, right? Which is why our yards look completely different, right? And I also believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? If you just stop because you think it's pointless, where else are you stopping just because you think it's pointless? See what I'm saying? Okay. So challenge the thoughts that challenge what you're thinking about. Take these thoughts captive. A great way to do that is to take an index card, a piece of paper, whatever you have, and just draw a line down the center And on one side, write down all the lies or the critiques that you're getting in your head. And on the other side, write down all the truth so that you can actually see, like, no wonder I feel like crap because I'm bullying myself all day, and that's just not acceptable, right? But a lot of times, unless we get it out, we don't recognize that. So that's number 4. Number 5 is join a small group, a life group, whatever you want to call it, but put yourself in some sort of group virtually right now and you can find a lot of these on Facebook. You can still find them on meetup.com. Some churches have groups as well that you can be part of, book studies, whatever that is, but join a group of some kind where you can start to experience the value and the weight of your opinion and things that are on your heart. It is so important to be in community, to see yourself in relationship to other people, to impact these people, to hear what's relevant to you, to hear what you're talking about, to just be in a space where you're learning and you're growing and you're around people and you're relating. It's so, so important to have those experiences. So join a small group. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 6. Go natural. A lot of times we practice like wearing the cutest clothes, having the new makeup, getting the designer bag, driving the cool car, going out to this club, going to this cool resort, like whatever, right? Like cool, like Instagram worthy, get it, right? But that doesn't train you to be comfortable in your own skin. That doesn't train you to really follow like a less is more mentality. That trains you to think that you've always got to do that kind of stuff. Otherwise, something's off. So the more that you can just, like me right now, not wear makeup, just wear a tee, just embrace a less is more mentality where the other stuff, you're like, okay, I clean up good, right? But you don't need it. Okay. Like you feel most comfortable in your most natural self when you've got like wavy hair going on, when you've got no makeup on, where you just feel comfortable, cozy, just free to be who you are. Practice doing that, right? Practice doing that around your partner so that you can get in the habit of not always having to be dressed up, not always having to have makeup on, not always having to look like super fly in order to get attention, right? Like just do something for the enjoyment of it, right? Like take baths for the enjoyment of just being able to relax and breathe and take in a fresh candle and put really great lotion on your body and just take care of yourself. Like go natural, right? And just practice what that feels like more often than not. Number 7, this is schedule spontaneous time. Now I know for like doers and achievers and like organized folks and people that are like, right? Like always after it. Awesome. But it can also be really challenging to not have a plan. So schedule time to not have a plan and just go with what you're feeling in that moment. Do you want to go to brunch? Do you want to go on a road trip? Do you want to go to the beach? Do you want to just like go hang at a park? Do you want to go hiking? Do you want to read a cool book? Do you want to journal? Do you want to write? Right? Like just schedule this spontaneous time so that as much as you plan, you can also practice the experience of just going with the flow. Because sometimes we can just train ourselves to be one way of being all the time. And we're just denying all these other parts of ourselves, which is just leading to repression. And those parts of ourselves need to be expressed, particularly if we want to avoid burnout and overwhelm and stress and all this other stuff. So schedule spontaneous time. All right. And then lastly, this is number 8, is get feedback from folks that are genuine, that you actually value their feedback about traits that they love about you, that they find really unique about you and special about you in the best way possible. Because sometimes that's helpful. We don't always recognize what people notice about us or what we're naturally gifted at or areas that we just exude confidence in. So that gives you a little preview into areas where you already show up with this confidence, but maybe you're not giving yourself credit for. So those are my 8 ways that you can boost your confidence at any time in any season, and that will only help you to show up. These things don't require money necessarily. These things don't require a lot of time. But when you're consistent with these things, you can really feel steady and immovable in the midst of some really unsteady and moving and challenging times. So I hope this message blessed you. If you want to get involved with a lot more work like this, make sure that you go check out the different offerings over on julianapage.com. You can also listen to the Spirit-Filled Real Talk podcast every Saturday over wherever you get your podcasts. And if you haven't subscribed, make sure that you do that. And if this message did bless you, make sure that you copy that link and share it with a friend. All right? Until next time, guys, stay blessed.